Welcome to part 1 in our Android development course. The first video is going to be the most basic and the most elementary, and it's just installing your IDE, which is your integrated development environment. In this case, it's going to be a piece of software called Android Studio. So if you just go to Google and you type download Android Studio, it should be your first result there. And regardless of whatever the version is in this video, and I'll put the link for this page down in the description below as well, but just go ahead and download the newest version. Click on this, accept your terms of conditions, and download. And that should take a second to download. And the reason that we're actually doing this video is because there's a couple of things that we're going to want to do later in this course using the command line. And to run those with the command line, there's a few things that we need to modify after we download Android Studio. Now that our install is complete, let's go ahead and run that installer. Hit next, and it's going to say minimum space is 3.2 gigabytes. Really, you're going to want at least 8 or maybe 10 or more than that, because we're going to have to install some emulated virtual Android phones as well. But just for the installation of the software, 3.2 is fine. But in reality, we're going to need more than that when we download all of our different Android versions, and then when we install virtual devices in our Android emulator. So hit next. The default location is fine. And then in here, this is just saying, hey, where do you want your start menu shortcut to be? So I'm just going to leave it in a new folder called Android Studio. Click install. Next. Okay, so now we're done. Click finish. It'll launch Android Studio for you. Once Android Studio comes up, you should see a page that looks like this. Before we make any new projects or start learning code or anything like that, we need to change some settings so that we can run some command line things later in the course. So go to More Actions, go to SDK Manager, and as well, there's a few other add-ons that we want here. So go to SDK Tools. Under the tools, we want to go ahead and add Google USB driver, Google Play Services, and then make sure you have these three up top, the Android SDK build tools, the Android emulator, as well as the Android SDK platform tools installed, which you should have all of those installed just by default. But if they're not, go ahead and add those as well. And then if you have an Intel processor, make sure to install this Axum installer, this Intel 86 emulator accelerator. But if you don't, if like me, you have an AMD processor, don't worry about that. And then let's go ahead and install all of these layout inspectors, because we'll be using those as well later in the course. So hit apply on that. Okay, finish. We should be good to go now. The only other thing we're going to want to do before we can actually jump into creating a new project is we want to, this tool right here, Android SDK Platform Tools, we want to go ahead and add that to our path variable for our system so that we can run that from the command line when we need to. So to do that, go ahead and open up a folder. It should be under C users and then whatever your username is. And I'll put this link down in the this path rather down in the description below. And then in here, it's actually going to be under a hidden folder called app data. And then if you look in local, and then under local, it'll be under Android and then SDK. So once you get in here, there's a couple executables that we're going to want to run from the command line. So to do that, we are going to add our tools directory and then the bin within that, as well as our platform tools directory to our path environment variable. So the way that we can do that is if you click on this PC and go to properties and then advanced system settings, environment variables, and then click on your path variable and hit edit. So now in here, all we're going to do Let's click New, and then we're going to copy these directories that we want. So the platform tools, we're going to copy that, New, paste it in, and then as well as the tools down here, copy that, New, paste it in, and then we're going to do the tools bin directory as well. Copy that, New, paste it in. Okay, and then hit apply on that. Now, if you bring up a command prompt or a PowerShell window and you type ADB, which stands for Android Debug Bridge, it should give you, instead of command not found, it should give you a list of essentially the description of that command and all the documentation for that. And that's how you can just double check that your path variable update worked correctly. So that is all that we're going to need for the installation of Android Studio. Go ahead and close out of that, and now we're back at our Welcome to Android Studio screen. In the next video, we'll go ahead and start working on, we'll make a new project and then do a tour of the Android Studio layout. And hopefully that's going to be useful for you, and we will see you in the next video.